What's up, everyone? This is Thomas Edwards Jr., coach at thomasedwardsjr.com and founder of the Professional Wingman. Welcome to the Weekly Intention, where I teach people how to live a better life right now using practical lessons from personal stories. So today, we're talking about depression. Oh yeah, I know. It's a tough, difficult, challenging conversation to have. And there's a reason for that. It's because we're not having it enough. We're not having the conversation about people's emotions enough. And it's important, it's vital for our livelihood, for everyone's livelihood, to have this conversation so we can be in touch with one another and know where we're at. If we're not feeling great about our lives or not, we need to know so we can be there to support them. Those people who are going through depression. I personally have been dealing with battling depression for years, unknowingly. And that's one of the biggest things that people don't realize, that when people are going through depression or having depression or however phrase you want to use, people do it unknowingly. And so I think it's important to talk about, like, what is it, when you hear depression, what does it really mean, right? And so in the dictionary, it says depression is a noun, feelings of severe despondency and dejection. In terms of psychiatry, they talk about a mental condition characterized by feelings of severe despondency and dejection, typically also with feelings of inadequacy and guilt, often accompanied by a lack of energy and disturbance of appetite and sleep. Basically what this means is you don't feel enough. You feel guilty about something that's going on in your life. And the lack of energy is due to lack of motivation, lack of purpose. You don't feel driven by any particular goal or circumstance, so you choose not to do anything. And with that, you don't feel like doing anything like sleep. You don't feel like eating. You don't feel like connecting. You don't feel like doing anything. In fact, you'd rather just isolate or cope, which depression, I don't want to, like I said, not an expert here, but in my experience, depression can be linked to many coping mechanisms, whether it's drinking, drugs, any other type of addiction, or escapism, just looking to isolate and be by oneself, or just be around people that you don't know. I know in my experience, whenever I went out, it was actually to isolate. I wanted to be away from the comfort of my home. Well, at the time, I thought it was uncomfortable to be home, and the security around friendships and family, and be around total strangers who didn't know me, so they couldn't see me. So he couldn't see how I was feeling. And that allowed me to make up whatever story I wanted to create for myself, to build myself up and create a narrative that I could control, that people who didn't know me couldn't see through. And oftentimes this was based on lack of motivation to actually do what I needed to do or what I wanted to do. And it was also just feelings of not being enough. Now, if you've seen previous episodes of The Weekly Intention, or if you've seen me go live on Facebook, I've talked about this feeling of inadequacy, just not feeling enough, even though I was able to create a lot for myself. And this is something that's typical. I'm not comparing myself to a celebrity, but when you think of people who have accomplished a lot in their lives, whether they are celebrities or entrepreneurs, CEOs, businessmen, people with a lot of money and fame and status, you commonly see them go through a level of depression, because there are many levels, many stages, and of them not feeling enough because what they thought they needed to have, which was that status, that money, that fame, was not enough. For me, my goal was to be the best in the world using the Professional Wingman, to be the best in the world at one-on-one coaching in a real-time environment. And I personally believe that I was able to accomplish that goal. And once I was able to accomplish that goal, being the best in the world at that very particular thing, there was a loss of purpose, there was a loss of direction. And when I immediately lost that purpose, I immediately sunk into essentially, what we know now is depression, as I now see it. But here's what's interesting. When you look deeper into the definition of depression, there's one interesting point that doesn't get brought up. So another definition of depression is the action of lowering something or pressing something down. So the example they use here is the depression of the plunger delivers 2 units of insulin. But what doesn't get acknowledged here is you can replace something with someone, or you can replace something with yourself. So if you were to put yourself into this, it would read, the action of lowering yourself or pressing yourself down. So think about it. When you are in a place where you don't feel enough, and people are telling you that you are enough, that you can accomplish the things that you set forward, and you look at those goals and those targets and you say to yourself, I can't do that, I shouldn't even bother. Or you do set goals, but they're not big enough. They're reachable, but they're not your stretch. You're not pushing yourself enough to grow. And you're limiting yourself based on what you believe you're capable of. That is actually depression. You are constantly in a place of limiting yourself, limiting your capabilities, and you're keeping yourself small. You're keeping yourself limited. And so depression can look in a variety of different ways. And as someone who has experienced it, it's not just an emotional state. It is an action that we actually put on ourselves. So when you think of any element of self-harm, coping, isolation, that is us taking depression and making it a verb in which we put on ourselves. And of course, there are other psychological or psychiatric elements behind it that we don't even realize is going on in the background that I can't speak of because I'm not a doctor. But as someone who's been through this process himself, who experienced this, I know exactly what this is like. There are plenty of times where I've woken up feeling very accomplished for what I was able to do for my clients the night before, but not feeling so accomplished with myself. And not feeling like I was worthy to get out of bed and actually do things for myself. I spent so long with this story around helping so many other people and not taking care of myself. Working and helping so many people at my expense. Because at the end of the day, there were so many people that I was able to help and help transform their lives, but I wasn't doing anything to help transform mine. And when I looked at myself and where I was at, yeah, I was limiting myself. Yeah, I was keeping myself small. Yeah, I was I was pushing myself down consistently. And when you do that, naturally you're going to fall into a state of depression. And that doesn't even include, alcohol being a natural depressant. That doesn't include things that you actually can do to trigger that depressed state, that depressed emotion, whether it's playing certain types of music, not eating, not sleeping, not allowing yourself to be driven by a certain purpose or a certain goal for yourself. These are all things that we can impose upon ourselves to get ourselves in this state of depression. Obviously, these things are going on in the background, and so you're not necessarily aware of those things, but hopefully this video can help you realize that you can become more aware of it. And that depression is something that more people go through than you think. Maybe you're watching this video right now and you're saying, holy crap, maybe I'm going through something like this. When you hear the word depression, it's not an all or nothing thing. You're not extremely depressed where like you want to kill yourself, or you're feeling so low about life that that's all there is. That is a level, but that's not the only level. Just like there isn't the only level around addiction and looking to cope and isolation. There are varying levels. And no matter where you are on this level, it doesn't make you different, because you're still at the end of the day depressed. And when you realize that you are in this place, then you can realize that you can also get support around it. You don't have to go about this alone. And part of this issue that a lot of us have gone through, for those who have gone through depression or going through it right now, is this idea that we can do this alone. It's what allows us to trick our minds into believing that we can do this on our own. So when we decided to do a process or to create transformation or go through a journey on our own, that within itself is actually isolation, which is a symptom of depression. I'm not saying that's a direct link, but chances are, if you are feeling a certain way, if you're feeling this right now, hearing this, and you're feeling a certain way, take a look around. Do you find yourself isolating and being alone, wanting to be alone, not wanting to connect? Chances are that's what's going on. And that's a tough place to be, because if you're by yourself and you find yourself in this state, it's a tougher challenge. It's a much more daunting challenge to try to get out of this by yourself. Perhaps being alone and isolating yourself is what brought you here to this place right now where you're not feeling enough. And oftentimes, this feeling of depression, and I'm once again sharing my experience, can be linked back to an experience you had in the past. It doesn't have to be traumatic. It could be consistent. It could be something small, but you just kind of took on. But it could have been something that you were told by your parents about being perfect. It could have been something you told about your parents not being enough. It could have been something that you've experienced being bullied growing up in school, going to school. It could be with your siblings. It could be in your neighborhood. It could be things that you have read or discovered online. I mean, there's so many things you experience online when you talk about cyberbullying and all that kind of thing. You know, that people forget that still goes on to this day, even though that was such a big trend when it was discovered. It still goes on. Your experiences online matter and can be easily attributed to your feeling of not being enough, especially if you're scrolling through Instagram and you see Instagram models and guys with 8-packs, and you're constantly in this place of comparison. Or you see your friends around, they have amazing things in their lives, whether it's a relationship, whether it's their career, money, physical, tangible objects, and you look at yourself and you size yourself next to that person and you say, I'm not enough. Oftentimes our environment is what creates this situation. And then we reinforce it based on our actions, just as I talked about before. That was certainly what I went through. So on the surface, I created a life for myself that was very accomplished, and I was driven based on that purpose. On the other side, what I wasn't letting people see was that I wasn't feeling enough. I didn't feel as though I was enough, and I was constantly limiting myself. When I look back, and I look at the professional wingman for what it was, could have been a lot bigger than what it was. Yeah, hell yeah. Was I in a space to let that happen? Hell no. I was not. Because I was depressed. I was constantly limiting myself and my capabilities. And eventually what happens is, even though you're living this great life for yourself on the surface level, which is when you look at celebrities and famous people and people of status and money, like eventually your emotions and your feelings and everything else that comes with it will catch up. And and that's why you'll find a lot of stories around famous people or people that you look up to where they are very accomplished, but their emotions and their feelings get so overwhelming that they get into a state where they burn things down and they completely destroy what they worked so hard to get, and then they leave themselves with nothing. I was that person too. I almost burned down and I was left with nothing. No marriage, no family, no business, no sense of purpose, no sense of self-worth. Fortunately, I was able to turn around and get support behind it. But the lesson that I want to share with you guys today is that there are different meanings around depression. And one of those meanings I've heard recently is actually depression can be seen as deep rest, where perhaps it's not always grim and dark and terrible and you feel hopeless and helpless. Sometimes you're just grieving. Sometimes you're grieving a loss of some kind. And it doesn't necessarily have to be of something or someone. It could be the loss of who you saw yourself to be, who you once was. And now that you evolve into a new place where you are seeing transformation and growth and a possibility beyond your wildest dreams, you can't help but to look back and say, wow, who was that person that I once was? And grieve that person, feel a sense of loss. You could feel depressed from that too. And that allows, and the most important thing is to take that time to create deep rest. Rest. Allow yourself that space and that time and that grace to allow yourself to feel what you feel, because if you constantly are coping or suppressing or isolating yourself, all that does is build up. It's like putting all this energy into this box and you're holding it. And this box can only hold so much until it explodes. And when it explodes, you don't know who's going to get hurt. Well, you always know you're going to get. You know one person who's going to be hurt, and that's you. But you don't know how that hurt extends beyond yourself. And so this leads me to what my sister sent me, which is amazing and inspired this whole video. And that is, she said, and I'll post this actually, this graphic up here, because I want to make sure I get to give it credit where it's due. But it says, if you rearrange the letters depression, you'll get I pressed on, meaning your current situation is not your final destination. And I find myself telling people and myself this all the time. Things don't last forever. Things are meant to change. We live in this world. We are cyclical human beings. We go in cycles. And so, the good doesn't last forever. The bad doesn't last forever. We constantly go through these ebbs and flows because that's how transformation works. That's how growth works. And if you're still alive, no matter how you're feeling, you are still here and you are capable of pressing on and not just surviving like I talked about last week. You can be prosperous and live the life that you want. But just know that wherever you are right now, no matter how dark, how grim, how awful you may feel, this is not where you're meant to be forever. This is not your final destination. If you allow yourself to press on, to push on, not only can you come out of that darkness with support, I want to make sure that's huge, with support, but you can be in a place, like I said, beyond your wildest dreams. I know for me, when things really got bad, I needed to double down on level support. I was already getting support around having a therapy, changing my lifestyle around going out, the food and drink I was taking in, the people I was hanging around, taking care of my body and my fitness. Also, groups, men's groups, coaching, getting coaches. There was so much more. And then I had to double down even more, commit myself even more to the process. Because the more support that I got, the more capable I saw myself becoming. Where now I'm in a place where I know I am more than enough. And whatever I choose to do, I'm meant to do. And so just get after it. And if you ask for support, support will come. A lot of times people don't know how much support they really have because they haven't asked for it. Maybe you're one of those people who's scared to ask for support. And maybe you're scared to ask not because you don't think anyone will respond. Maybe you're scared because of who will respond. How many people will respond. Depression is no joke, guys. And I want you guys to know that you're not alone. If there's anything you get from this video is that you are not alone, and where you are right now is not where you'll be forever. It's not your final destination. So like this graphic said, press on. Deep rest. It's an emotional state, and you can definitely trigger yourself to get out of it, just like you can trigger yourself to get into it. And what you need is support in helping to create a better conditions around your life. So my question for you is, where in your love, lifestyle, leadership, and legacy do you find yourself in this depressed state due to your behaviors, your actions, your decision making, or even your thinking that's triggering these feelings? What are you doing that's pressing yourself down, that's keeping you in a limited state, that is not tapping into your true capabilities? And what is your intention to get support, to at least create a plan of action that's going to trigger you out of this state? And instead of being depressed, you feel worthy, you feel enough, you feel big, you feel worth it. Add any other adjective there, sense of being there, purposeful. It's so important to acknowledge and just be aware of how you're emotionally feeling and be able to talk about this. The most important act of self-love, I believe, is sharing. Sharing what you're feeling, sharing what's on your mind, sharing your experiences. Because you may not realize, but there might be someone out there who's going through the exact same thing you are going through too. They might be right where you are, wanting to listen for someone to believe that they're not alone. Or they might be ahead and they've gotten out of where you are and can help you and can support you in getting out yourself. Support is out there, guys. So get it. You can go to thomasedwardsjr.com/talk and you'll get all the information around how you can get support in creating better conditions in your life, so you're not in this place of depression, but you're in a place of purpose and decisive action and happiness and connection and fulfillment. There are ways you can do it that could support you. I'm not saying that I'm gonna be your end all of support, because I tell you what, like, I have so many levels of support. It's incredible. But to be where I am today, I couldn't do it without that support. So this could be that first step towards really creating the amount of support that you need in your life to transform. If you like this video, give me some love, subscribe, thumbs up, share this with someone who needs to hear this message, because they too can live a better life with the right intention. And sometimes people just want to feel like they're being heard, even if they're not saying anything. So that's all I got, guys. This is Thomas saying, keep it simple, be amazing, and live intentionally.